Cold light glints off the glass in the visitation room. A 7-year-old boy looks up and whispers 2 trembling words, "Dad." Next to the boy sits a 20-year-old inmate. 5 years ago, he took a life. At 15, he lost his freedom and his future. But this tragedy began long before the murder, in a home already falling apart. From one slap to a death. From an absent father to a lost son. Maybe he wasn't born cruel. He just never learned what love was, or how to live without pain. Welcome to Red Eastern True Crime. If you like stories that explore real crime and the society behind it, please subscribe. Today, we uncover a case from Guizhou, China. A murder that began with a debt of just $30. April 19th, 2013, 6 p.m. Police in Liupanshui City, Guizhou Province, received a 110 emergency call. A woman's body had been found inside a tiny mom-and-pop store on number 160 Renmin Road. When officers arrived, the scene was chaos. Shelves overturned, merchandise scattered across the floor, the cash drawer forced open, empty. The victim's clothing was in disarray, her body showing clear signs of struggle. A dark ligature mark circled her neck. She lay face down on the cold floor, completely still. At first glance, it looked like a robbery gone wrong, but as detectives began to dig deeper, they realized this was no simple crime of theft. It was something far darker. The victim was a woman in her 30s, originally from Hunan Province. 2 years earlier, she and her husband had moved to Guizhou, hoping to make a living by running this modest little shop. Neighbors said they were kind, quiet, and hardworking. They had no enemies, no disputes, just an ordinary couple trying to get by. But inside this small, unremarkable store, her life came to a brutal end. Police quickly pulled surveillance footage from nearby shops. 2 figures appeared on screen, slipping into the store late at night. Their movements were hesitant, almost uncertain. After cross-checking the footage, investigators were stunned. The suspects weren't hardened criminals. They were just 15-year-old boys. Their names, Shan Jiahong and his friend Shandi, both were arrested within hours. Inside the interrogation room, beneath the harsh white light, the story began to unfold. The day before the murder, April 18th, Sean, a school dropout, was dozing at home when his grandfather burst in, furious. "You borrowed money and never paid it back?" Months earlier, Sean had taken 200 yuan, about $30, from the shop's owner. That afternoon, while checking her accounts, the woman noticed the money was still missing. After months without repayment, she stopped by to mention it to Sean's grandfather, hoping the family would remind him. But to the proud old man, it wasn't a reminder. It was an insult. "You shame this family," he shouted. Faced with his grandfather's scolding, Sean didn't flinch. He rolled his eyes and muttered, "I forgot." That careless reply was like fuel on fire. The argument flared, voices rose, and then came a sharp crack. His grandfather's hand struck his face. No one knew it then, but that single slap lit the fuse of a tragedy. Sean's body shook with rage. To him, the shopkeeper was to blame. "She couldn't just stay out of it. Because of her, I was beaten. Because of her, I lost face." Humiliation curdled into anger, and anger soon hardened into revenge. Sean was small, wiry, and knew he could not do this alone. He rang his childhood friend Dee 3 times. They'd gone to school together. Sean had dropped out at 11. Dee had stayed on. Neighbors called Sean a troublemaker. Dee's mother had warned him to keep his distance. Still, loyalty and shame pulled Dee in, and he finally agreed. Late, when the streets were empty and most shops were closed, the little store's light still glowed. They knocked, pretending they wanted to buy something. The owner opened the door. The moment it shut behind them, everything changed. They lunged. They overpowered her. She screamed, "What are you doing?" Sean hissed, "Shut up. I just borrowed $30. Why did you tell my grandfather?" Anger spilled over into a vow. If you meddle, I'll take everything. She did not believe they would hurt her. She threatened to call the police, and that threat snapped the last thread of restraint. They dragged her to the attic under a bare bulb, produced a fruit knife, and demanded money. They took 300 RMB from her wallet and found 600 hidden in her bra. 900 RMB in total, roughly $148. Downstairs, the light still burned. Upstairs, the house folded into darkness. Sean sent Dee downstairs to rifle the till. He stayed in the attic. He assaulted her. The shopkeeper, humiliated and terrified, broke down completely. Her fear turned to fury. She screamed that she would call the police and have them arrested. Terror and rage twisted inside Sean's mind. If I'm caught, my life is over, he thought. Something snapped. He turned to Dee and said the words that sealed their fate. We have to finish it. When the woman realized they truly meant to kill her, she began to beg, promising she wouldn't report them. But it was too late. They no longer believed her. They wrapped a leather belt around her neck and pulled, tightening again and again, until her body went still, and the room fell silent. All this, over $30. Officers listening to Sean's confession were stunned into silence. A petty debt had spiraled into robbery, assault, and murder. On May 20th, 2014, the verdict was handed down. Sean was found guilty of murder, rape, and robbery, sentenced to life imprisonment. Dee was convicted of murder and robbery, and sentenced to 17 years behind bars. Both were transferred to the Provincial Juvenile Correctional Facility. In 2018, China Central Television's program Confession interviewed Sean. He was 20 years old then. His head shaved, his voice calm, his eyes hollow. Sean was born in 1998, the middle child of 3. His family lived on the outskirts of Lupanshui City. When he was 4, his mother died of illness. His father soon left home to work elsewhere, leaving Sean and his siblings in the care of their aging grandparents. In 2008, tragedy struck again. His father was arrested for drug trafficking and sentenced to 13 years in prison. Sean was 10. He dropped out of primary school soon after. The grandparents could feed and clothe him, but they didn't know how to raise him. Discipline came through slaps and shouting. Affection was almost none. Whispers from neighbors, pity from teachers. Sean grew up under the shadow of shame. He started wandering the streets, skipping school, hanging out with older troublemakers, learning fast how to fight, lie, and survive. By 12, he had a girlfriend a few years older. They began living together. When she became pregnant, they hid for months. But secrets don't stay buried. Her parents found out and came raging to Sean's home. To their disbelief, Sean's grandparents didn't scold him. They insisted the girl keep the baby, all for the sake of carrying on the family line. With Shane's father in prison and the family living in poverty, they feared no one would ever marry into their household, that the bloodline would end with him. They never realized that what they called legacy was, in truth, the beginning of another tragedy. At 13, Sean became a father. He worked briefly at a bar to earn money, but was soon dismissed for being underage. He drifted between odd jobs, borrowed money to get by. Behind bars, Sean's father worried constantly. He feared his son's pride and poverty would one day destroy him. He was right. He just never imagined it would happen so soon, or that the price would be so devastating. In confession, Sean spoke softly. I told her I'd pay her back. I really just forgot. But she went to my grandfather, and that single act lit the fuse. When the old man scolded and struck him, humiliation twisted into fury. In Sean's mind, the shopkeeper became the enemy. Because of her, I was beaten. Because of her, I lost face. He never remembered that she had once helped him, not harmed him. He said he only wanted to teach her a lesson, to make her afraid, to make her apologize. But anger spreads like fire. Once lit, it devours everything. By the time he realized what he had done, the line between punishment and murder had already vanished. Afterward, Sean was terrified, but not repentant. He thought being 15 made him untouchable. At most 2 years, he told himself. They can't do more than that. So he didn't run, didn't hide. It wasn't until he stood in court and heard the words life imprisonment that Sean finally understood. This time, there was no way back. When Sean entered prison, his son was only 2. His own father was still serving time. Whatever fragile balance the family had left collapsed completely. Sean's grandfather never forgave himself. He believed that single slap had set everything in motion, that he had struck not just his grandson, but his family's fate. In 2018, after 10 years behind bars, Sean's father was released early. He took in Sean's little boy, a child already growing up without a father. That same year, the program Confession arranged a meeting. November 18, 2018, the Visitation Room. For the first time, 3 generations sat together: a 20-year-old father, a 7-year-old son, and an old man. The boy was so excited he barely slept the night before. He even drew a picture, his father tall, kind, and smiling. When they sat down, the boy looked around curiously. "Dad, who are all these people?" Sean answered softly, "They're my teachers." The boy blinked. "You have so many teachers." Sean gave a faint smile. "Dad made mistakes. Now they're teaching me how to change." He asked his son if he was cold, what he was learning in school, and whether anyone bullied him. The boy shook his head. Sean reached out, gently resting a hand on his son's hair. "Don't compare yourself to others," he said quietly. "Every family is different. If you ever feel sad, talk to Grandpa. Don't keep it inside." In prison, Sean worked long hours at the sewing workshop, earning only a modest wage. At the officer's suggestion, he stitched a shirt for his father by hand and gave his son the 600 RMB he had saved, about $90. It was the first time in 5 years he had done something a father should do. Before the visit ended, the guards took a photo. 3 generations together, their smiles tense and fragile, caught beneath the cold fluorescent light. In the program, Sean's voice trembled as he spoke. "I'm so sorry. To the victim, and to her family. She once helped me, and I ended up destroying her." But then he added softly, "I didn't understand the law." Did he really not understand? Or did he already know that his age would shield him from the full weight of justice? He said he forgot to repay the money. But was it truly forgetfulness? Or had he never planned to pay it back at all? As for the other boy, D, he was pulled under by friendship. Sean called, and he couldn't say no. Sean wanted to rob. He followed. Sean wanted to kill. He still followed. One careless friendship ruined his life. He became living proof of one cruel truth, that sometimes the worst mistake you can make is not listening to your mother. He dropped out of school at 10, fell in love at 12, became a father at 13, and at 15, took a life and lost his own. This case stirs both anger and sorrow. A mother gone too soon, a father behind bars, grandparents who could feed him but not guide him. No one ever taught him what kindness meant, or where the boundaries of right and wrong should lie. He was both victim and perpetrator, a child abandoned by fate, who grew up to destroy someone else's. Maybe one day, he'll walk free for good behavior. But that night, the night he killed, will remain the cage he can never leave behind. Perhaps he wasn't born evil. Perhaps he simply never learned how fragile the line between good and evil can be. And for his son, may he never inherit that darkness, but live an ordinary, quiet life beneath the sunlight. What do you think of this case? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this story meaningful, please like and subscribe.